In this video, we're going to start by doing the outlining of the character. So to start, you're going to need to open up Illustrator. I've already got my Illustrator window set up. So open that up, then go up to File here and make a new window or a new document. I've already started up a new document, so when you do this, just give your document a name, and we're going to set the size to 1280 by 800. And this isn't exactly meaningful. It's going to be a vector image, so it doesn't make a whole lot of difference whether or not the image is very big or very small, because we'll always just be able to scale it. The next thing we need to do is place our reference. So we're going to go to File and Place. And I've just got my sketch right here on the desktop, and then click anywhere on there to place it. This is pretty small. I can, with the selector tool selected, and then click on one of these anchors and resize it. Now if I hold shift, it will hold the proportions. So I'm going to do that. Then you can see over here on the layers panel that I have this first layer that's got my linked file. I am going to click on this open area here to lock it so that I won't be able to drag that around. And that's just so that when we're drawing on top of it, we can't edit it. Alright, now I'm going to create a new layer, and then go over here to the pen tool. Now, when we're doing this, it's really important to create closed shapes, even though some of these may look like they're not closed. So, we're just going to do that to create a closed shape. We can select this shape and change the fill to anything we want. And that's going to be ideal. So go back and select your pen tool. And actually, before we start, it's really helpful to turn the stroke off just so it won't cover up the sections that you're trying to reference. So over here, this is the no fill icon. Just click on that. Now with the pen tool selected, you can click on your first point and then click for the second point. Now I've clicked on the second point, but I'm holding it and dragging it out, and this creates a curve. If you weren't to do that, if you were to just click and then click and then click, this works as well, but you're going to be creating pointed shapes. So if you're creating something like a robot or something that's less organic, that might be the option you want to use. But for this character, we're going to be using curves. Alright, and it doesn't have to be exact. You just need to make sure you're in the right place in general, and we can come back and fix these later as well. So you just need to come through, go all the way around the entire character. And then I've kind of put myself into a bit of a bad situation here where I'm not going to be able to get the shape I want. So to go backwards while you're using the pen tool, if you Control Z or just go up to the undo, it will bring you back to the step that you were just on, and it will let you kind of try that again. So let's do that. Actually, maybe right there. Alright, so now this is looking good. This is kind of the outline of this hat shape that we have. But we do have this other shape on the front of the hat, which is supposed to be kind of like fur. So that was going to be resting on top of the hat. And you may want to stop finishing this shape. But we really, for what we're doing right now, we have to close this shape. So once your shape is closed, you can just move on to the next thing. And I'm going to work on this fur now. And then we can zoom in a little bit more. And then with us making cartoon characters, you know, these don't have to be exact or anything. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Now, you probably notice that the hat outline here is running just straight through the fur outline. And that's definitely not what we want to go for. This is not looking fantastic. But one other thing that you have to consider is that Afterbird, once we're getting into the coloring stage, we can fill this with a color like white, and it's just going to draw right over this outline. So while this outline is still there, you can see it cutting through this shape. We're not actually going to end up seeing it. So don't be concerned about drawing through your shapes. It's more important that they're closed, because if you don't close the shapes, they're not going to fill correctly. Alright, and now using the pen tool can be a bit tedious. It will take a fair amount of time to draw out an entire character, but we'll just keep working on this guy. Now on the pocket, I am going to do something a little bit weird. Now this is going to be the bottom part of the pocket, but I want there to be this flap that covers it so that it will click shut, this hat pocket. So I'm going to draw a separate shape for that. Just draw that right here. Alright, so this is going to be the pocket shape. Now it's going to do the same type of thing as the hat, where we don't want this bottom shape to cut through it, but we also want to create a sense of three-dimensionality while also being able to fill in all of our shapes. So with this we can create a better looking pocket by giving this its own separate shape and then giving the bottom of the pocket its own separate shape. So now we can just unfill those. And then now I'm going to create the button here. It's a little hard to see on this picture. It's kind of zoomed in and blurry, but we can go over here to our shape tools. There's the rectangle and the ellipse tool. This will also work for circles. And same with the rectangle for squares, which we might be using later. So with the ellipse tool selected, you can click on the center of your button shape, and then click and hold Alt and Shift. And then you can just drag your shape out. Now, clicking and holding Alt Shift creates a shape from the center. So it's going to drag this out and the center is going to stay the same. If we were to just click and drag out an ellipse, it's going to keep the origin point the same, and then if we hold Shift, it's just going to create a perfect circle. But for us, we want to be able to put it in a particular place, so I'm going to do that with the Alt Shift. If you don't do this though, you can always just move it later. Not a big problem. Alright, now if you're super zoomed in here, you might want to pan. You can just do this by holding space and then dragging around. Give you some more better view of your character. Alright, so the next piece of this we're going to do is going to be the head. And the head, just like all of our other shapes, needs to be closed. So I'm going to start on the inside of the hat here. And then just actually, that's looking a little bit better. And then we just need to get the general contour of the face. And then we can just go ahead and close that. Now this doesn't exactly look like what this character's head might look like, but since the hat's going to be covering it, it doesn't really matter. Just need to make sure that this is where we want it and that this is actually a closed shape. I'm going to go ahead and make another eye, or another circle for the eye. On this one, I think I might actually squish it in. So I can do that by dragging one of these anchor points and just bring it in with the selection tool. Alright, now I'm going to do this eyebrow here, and it's a little blurry, so I'm kind of going to make this one up. Alright, that's looking about what we want. Now I'm going to add in this mouth, which the mouth actually, since it isn't going to be filled, does not need to be a closed shape. I am just going to click on the corner of this mouth where I want it, and then the end point, just drag that so it has a little bit of a curve. And then now I've got this pen tool, which is just floating around, waiting for me to click on another anchor point. Instead of doing that, I'm going to push enter, and now it's released that. So I've prompted it to let me make a new shape, but we're just finishing up this line here. Alright, so looks like all of our character's head is finished. There is a pattern in the inside of the hat, but we're not actually going to touch that right now. We'll come back to that in a little bit when we do the fill colors. So I guess we're just going to go ahead and do the rest of the body, and it's going to be just the same as the head. Just make sure you're doing closed shapes, and it's perfectly fine if they overlap. So I'm going to speed through this so you don't have to watch all of this. Okay, so now we've got our character mostly drawn out. And now we have an opportunity to go back and fix some of the things that aren't looking quite right. So you can see there's this little corner right on the eyebrow. Not super fond of that, so we can just click on this direct select tool, click on this specific little anchor point, and then drag that. Now this has rounded out and looking a lot better. On the arm here, I'm going to do the same thing. Bring this down a little bit. And round out his shoulder. And where else? Alright, I think that's looking pretty much where we want it to. The last thing we're going to need to do for outlining is a few of the details. And I did one on the foot already, but here on the sleeve, we need just another line to illustrate the cuff. So I'm going to do a little bit of a wave shape here. And since it's going to be just a line, just hit enter on that. It doesn't need to have a closed shape. Click back to the ellipse tool here, and we can add in another button. Alright. And then we can come down to the shoe here. And then I'm going to just add in some of the laces. So I'm going to click here on the path with the pen tool, and then just do a bit of a zigzag. Alright, and then I can hit enter, and then I'm going to add in the loops on the shoelaces. Now I am making these closed shapes, but it really doesn't matter because we're not going to fill them. They're just going to end up being lines for this particular drawing. Alright, so now we can zoom out. You can see in here, getting these pointy, sharp corners. Don't really want those because they're going to stick out into the rest of our shape. I don't think that those are very good, so we can actually click on each individual anchor with the direct select tool, or you can click on this entire path, go over to our stroke panel, which you'll be able to find right in here, clicking stroke, go to the corners, and we can just go to the round joint button right here. Oop, gotta select that. Alright, now it's gotten rid of those. The way that works is the path here is going to touch this other line here, but since it's so pointy, it's going to extend past that. But we can just tell Illustrator to make those rounded corners. Alright, so that's about all we need to do for outlining. The only other thing to note is that if we look in our layer 2 here, we can expand this and see that it is absolutely a mess. So it's kind of recommended to go through and clean this up a little bit. So we can shift click and select multiple objects here, like this pocket here. I'm going to do Control G, or go to Object and Group those things together. So when you click them, it selects all the objects. And then if we go through, we can find our selected object right here, this group, and it's going to group these 3 shapes together. Now if we were to go through and do this for every aspect of our character, it is going to clean this up a lot. It'll be a lot easier to go through here and select particular things that we want, so I would recommend doing that, and I will have that done for the next video. Alright, so if you've gotten this far, that's good, and you can just move on to the next video, which will be coloring.